Chicago Bulls have not won a lot of games this season and have won even less as far as per percentage since the Zach LaVine trade. But on today's episode, I'm going to talk about why one of the Chicago Bulls' least successful lineups has to be one of the most played for the remainder of the season. We're going to get into the details of that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. And so there is a Bulls lineup that has basically the worst net rating in the game of basketball since they started playing together, and that is Nikola Vucevic, Josh Giddey, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, and Matas Buzelis. And we're going to talk about why, despite what the stats have said about that lineup, it needs to be the Bulls' most played lineup here for the remainder of the season. The first reason why that we're going to talk about that this lineup has to be played quite a bit leading into the rest of the season is Josh Giddey's pending contract extension. Now, I want to be clear here. Josh Giddey has been, it's been mixed. It hasn't been as bad as what some people have said. The minutes there, we'll get into some of the details why, right? But overall, I think that especially with Josh Giddey needing to go out and find his deal out on the open market, that's really what this is about, right? Regardless of however Josh Giddey finishes the season, we'll get into some stats here in a second, is that the best, I think, case scenario for both Josh Giddey and the Chicago Bulls is to allow Josh Giddey to go out and find his deal, find out his value out there on the open market by meeting with other teams. Now, the Bulls do hold, he's a restricted free agent, so they do hold the right to match any deal that he does get. But I think that that's the path that this is starting to go down, right? When you look over Josh Giddey over the last 12 games, he's averaging actually 15.3 points per game, 5.6 assists, 6.6 rebounds, and 1.2 steals per game, right? He's also shot the ball 48% from the field and 41% from three, taking about 5 3-pointers per game. So it seems like Josh Giddey's in another one of his stretches where the three-point shooting is actually decent. Now, the assist number, I know there are going to be a lot of Bulls fans that say, but Hayes, Josh Giddey's best attribute, or one of his stronger attributes, is his ability to play make, is his assist number. So we're going to settle for 5.6 assists per game? Well, glad that you asked that. When you have a 3-guard lineup, sometimes even 4-guard lineup, the benefit that brings is the fact that you have a lot of passing. So, yes, he is only averaging 5.6 assists per game over the last 12 games. But you look at what Coby's averaging, what Ayo's averaging, right? And what they're getting as far as assists as well, even when Lonzo, when he's in that starting lineup with Josh Giddey. So I'm not really as concerned about the assist number considering the exact type of lineups that we play Josh Giddey in, right? But you have noticed that Josh Giddey has been more aggressive, right? He's attacking the basket a lot more. He's using his size a lot more, and it seems like he's a lot more confident. He's getting more shots, of course, especially since Zach LaVine's been gone when it comes down to it. But he has, the part of the knock on Josh Giddey is he doesn't really finish as strongly through contact. 56% on his short mid-range shots. That's between 4 to 14 feet. That's on cleaning the glass. So, it is what it is. But he's been very effective with his float game as well, right? And then you look at finishing at the basket, though, it's not really good. He's not finishing at the basket as much as you would like, but he is getting 3 free throw attempts per game, so he is getting more to the free throw line over that 12-game sample size. So, what it is. Josh Giddey's stats are Josh Giddey's stats. Josh Giddey as a player is who Josh Giddey is as a player. But either way, right, taking that out of consideration is that when you look at over the final 27 games left on the Chicago Bulls schedule, right, is that even though Josh Giddey is 22 years old, right, and even though Josh Giddey is one of the best players in the league or the most efficient players in the league at creating open shots for his teammates, regardless of all of that, Josh Giddey has to find his value by going out there in the open market, meaning he's going to have to meet with some teams. He may even have to sign an offer sheet. And I know that there are going to be some more, misaligned Josh Giddey stands, not fans. Stands, not fans are very different things, right? There are going to be some misaligned Josh Giddey stands to say, how that's disrespectful. You give him the money. You do. It's not. I'm sorry, it's just not. It's common practice around the NBA for a reason. So he's going to have to go out and sign and find out what his value is. And like I said, that's good for both him and the team. It eliminates any and all questions about what a player's value is. If other teams around the league see Josh Giddey as a $28 to $30 million player, then the Bulls have to face the fact of, hey, this is the value for Josh Giddey. And now we got to figure out if we feel like that's value that we're willing to match. Now, case point is that more than likely, no matter how strongly Josh Giddey ends the season, because of other issues, because of him being a restricted free agent, because of the season not going the best, the Bulls not winning, he's probably not going to get a deal or offer that high, and that's what could save the Bulls from themselves. Don't bid against yourself again. Don't go to a situation in which you're in the Patrick Williams situation, bidding against yourself or betting against yourself, and you still lose, right? So that's something that you have to look at when it comes down to Josh Giddey. And another thing is fit. Fit is a big part that you have to look at this. I talked about why the lineup that we're going to have to play the most, which probably going to be our starting lineup here for the remainder of the season, is one of the worst lineups that we play. And part of that is the backcourt mate that Josh Giddey plays with as well. Josh Giddey and Coby White over the last 10 games, so that is even before Zach LaVine was out, right, are terrible. When you look at plus minus, they have the worst plus minus on the roster. Coby White, negative 13.9. Josh Giddey, negative 11.1, right? And that's just not good when it comes down to it. And the fact of the matter is, what's so concerning about their play together is the fact that they've actually been really good on offense together, right? But it's just how bad defensively they are that are messing up their plus minus. And that is a backcourt you got to ask yourself, who are you investing in? And many Bulls fans have asked that question here over the last couple of weeks and months. Is like, all right, is it going to be Coby? Is it going to be Giddey, right? And it's seeming like it's going to have to be that because the ineffectiveness of these guys together. The Coby White's defensive rating over that same stretch of games is 127.2. Josh Giddey, 123.2, right? They're last and second to last in defensive rating. They have been absolutely terrible on defense. That just is what it is, right? Now, is some of that going to improve? Maybe you want to hold out some hope. Maybe you hold out hope that you can change this team in a way that you can bring some necessary help defense, whether it's a wing defender and a big something to help this team defensively. But I tell you what, it's not going to be. Josh Giddey and Coby White have both been really solid offensively. Really solid offensively over the last handful of games. Coby White's had 2 games in that to where he was mad questionable, right? But I'm saying when you're looking at the overall product, they've actually had some really good offensive performances. The problem is the defense. And you have to ask yourself, can you build something around a backcourt that is so misaligned defensively? They are absolutely terrible defensively. Terrible defensively. And so that is a huge question that faces this front office with this building of the team and where you're going because, and both of them are free agents, one this year and the one the year afterwards. So you do have an opportunity to pivot off one of these guys, but I can completely see a world in which the Bulls re-sign Josh Giddey, they re-sign Coby White, and they still think it's gonna be figured out. Because again, this has been a front office that has looked at a non-fit on the court and basically looked at it in the face and said, "Hey, listen, we're not worried about that fit. Fit? What's fit?" Right? So that's a problem in of itself for this front office. But I do think that as far as the people that look at the game analytically and try to figure out, all right, how can this work? There's huge questions around Josh Giddey and Coby White working as a backcourt long term. So, that's just something that you gotta look at, and that's gonna play at least somewhat of a role, I would hope, into what they decide to do with Josh Giddey. If you keep Josh Giddey, you have to start changing the roster in a way that it helps him more. I'm not saying you have to build the roster around him, but you absolutely have to look at maximizing the skills and mitigating some of the weaknesses, right? But that's that part of it. So I talked a little bit about Josh Giddey, talked a little bit about the backcourt fit overall. Again, in the Bulls' worst lineup, which is Coby White, Josh Giddey, Ayo Dosunmu, Matas Buzelis, and Nikola Vucevic. But let's get into some of the further reasons why we're going to have to see more of that lineup. Nikola Vucevic. Nikola Vucevic is averaging 12.2 points per game, 9.4 rebounds on 40% shooting from the field since Zach LaVine left. And one of the things that the Bulls looked at the trade deadline was potentially moving Nikola Vucevic. Now, they decided they did some groundwork, laying out the groundwork for a potential move during this offseason. And the fact of the matter is, not only have we maybe seen that Nikola Vucevic's value has already dropped, right? Which is crazy thing to say because, of course, if you're looking to wait to make a deal, that would mean that you're waiting to make that deal hoping that the same value is going to be there in the offseason. What we're seeing so far, and again, small sample size, but what we're seeing so far is that, hey, there's a chance that value is already starting to drop for Nikola Vucevic. It's already starting to drop for him, right? And when you look at if Nikola Vucevic has finished this season with the numbers that we've seen him put up since Zach LaVine's departure, you might as well kiss that goodbye that you're going to find first-round pick compensation for Nikola Vucevic. Now, of course, there could be a team that looks at what Vuce did at the beginning of the season and says, hey, he can be more like that here because we have a better structure. We actually have some running court mates or some teammates that he can actually, run his offense with that can maximize him. But overall, you're still not going to pay a premium value for players that value is clearly taking a dive in the toilet, right? And so when you look at it again, this is once again AK being played by other GMs and front offices, because I would not be surprised at all if the front offices that Arturas Karnisovas was discussing with said, hey, they just traded Zach LaVine. What they get back? Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, Zach Collins? That's what they got back for that? Okay, let's see if they make another deal. They didn't bring in any other talent? I bet. Now, let's wait out and watch this, because now that Nikola Vucevic is going to have to play with Coby White being the highest volume player that we have there. We know he's inconsistent. What's Vuce going to look like then, right? What's Vuce going to look like? Are we going to get even better value for Nikola Vucevic, somebody who can be a 20-10 center? Then you look at the age. Nikola Vucevic would be almost 36 years old, right? Or going towards that direction. So, yes, teams are absolutely waiting out, and we could see once again that the Chicago Bulls, with their inability to pull the trigger on a deal for Nikola Vucevic at this trade deadline, ends up biting them in the ass. Now, let's say Vuce wakes up here, right, and plays much better over the end of the season. He still finishes a strong 20-10 number getter. All right, cool. The value's probably still going to be there for Vuce, but we can't act like we are not seeing the decline of Nikola Vucevic right before our eyes, at least with the numbers that we have so far, right? And that's the thing that you got to look at when it's all said and done for Vuce. Now, I think that Vuce is going to wake back up, right? His last game, it was 21 points, 14 rebounds, right? But if you look at it, over the course of February, he's averaging 13.5 points per game, 9.7 rebounds, right? That's not good numbers at all. On 45% shooting and 28% shooting from three, you better hope that Nikola Vucevic wakes up if you're hoping to extract any value out of that contract of Nikola Vucevic this offseason. Otherwise, hey, you once again are going to be failed and made a victim of not pulling the trigger at the right time. But that is why Nikola Vucevic has to play a lot over the course of the remaining part of this season, right? And then let's get into the other reason why, right? Of course, we know Ayo Dosunmu also has a contract coming up. We know that Matas Buzelis is the Bulls' young rookie that has actually been flashing some things. That lineup that I talked about in Coby White, Josh Giddey, Ayo Dosunmu, Matas Buzelis, and Nikola Vucevic, that lineup right there, right, have been outscored by 47 in the minutes that they've played. 47, right? Now, their net rating is 36.4, which is not good at all, right? And that is something that is just, it's bad overall, but you have to play these guys. Nikola Vucevic is a trade candidate. Josh Giddey, you have to figure out if you're going to sign him or not, right? Coby White, he's your leading usage rate player for the remaining part of the season. And then, of course, same can be said about Ayo Dosunmu. Well, Ayo Dosunmu's been more solid. He's one of the guys that don't have necessarily knock on, but listen, Ayo Dosunmu's defensive rating has not been great either, even though we know that Ayo is a much better defender. The team aspect is hurting him, and maybe the Bulls, they kind of know they're going to bring Ayo back. They want to see what Ayo actually looks like as a player on a better team that's overall better well constructed. But you still got to make the same free agent decision you have to make with Coby White coming up at some point next season if you can extend him, right? If he agrees to a contract extension, or you have to go into unrestricted free agency, you still got to look at what Ayo Dosunmu is going to be for the team, right? So this Bulls team has once again put themselves in a position to where they don't have a choice. You have to play this lineup. You have to, because all your decisions that are coming up on your team are all tied to this lineup. Now, Ayo as a starter, 14 points per game, 52% shooting from the field, 30% shooting from three, taking 4.5 threes per game, 3.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.3 steals. Listen, Ayo's the one, right? That if you're looking at, Ayo's the one that is decent enough. The defensive rating, I'm not going to hold against him and knock for him completely, because it's hard to have a defensive rating when you're the only defender in a lineup. And while Matas Buzelis has tremendous upside, he's a terrible defender so far. Now, he's much better than what he started off the season with, right? And while the block shots are great, that doesn't equate to on-ball defense or switchable defense. So Matas Buzelis is still learning. And that's why you have to continue playing him in this lineup as well, because Matas as a starter is giving you something. Matas as a player as well is right now, he's your future. In the month of February, he's averaging almost 15 points per game on 60% shooting from the field, 40% shooting from three, almost 3 rebounds per game, 1.5 assists, right? He's doing that with only 1 turnover per game as well. Matas Buzelis is not your problem here. He's not the player that you're looking at and saying either. So if we're looking at it, Ayo and Matas are doing what they need to do, what they're expected to do, I should say, right? Ayo is a player that not a lot of offense is always going to go through him, so it's hard to judge him just by the offense, right? But when you look at what he's still bringing up in the stats he's putting up as a starter, they're solid enough, right? Matas Buzelis as a starter for you, he's playing solid enough, shooting over 50% from the field. A block shot per game, almost a steal per game, right? So Matas is showing you some things as well, right? But the Bulls have put themselves where so much of their potential future is tied to a lineup that every measurable statistic that you can possibly have is telling you this ain't it. It's telling you this lineup that you're playing, whether it's them having not enough defense, them having not enough half-court offense, them not having enough isolation scoring, them not having enough coaching, whatever it is, you're put in a situation where you have to play this lineup now, because so much of your future is tied into, and the upcoming decisions that you have to make are tied into that starting lineup, right? And that may come by the behest of, Julian Phillips not playing more, which, is another thing entirely, right? But that's where we sit, man. That's where we sit, and it just continues to be for the Chicago Bulls. Really, I always call it a comedy of errors, right? That's what I always call it, because it's not great, right? It's just not great. The lineup that you have to play it has a plus minus of -47, a net rating of -38.7, an offensive rating of only 130, and a defensive rating of 138.7. 138.7. And again, the higher number for defensive rating is actually the worst number, right? They also only play with a 97 pace. Now, they do have the benefit of an 80% assist ratio, which is really good. A true shooting of 54. You know how bad it is as a team for a true shooting percentage to be 54%, right? Now, this lineup also has an added benefit, and this is where I'm going to end the show at. The added benefit of playing your worst lineup and needing to play your worst lineup to make your decisions on these players and what their future holds, it also means you're going to lose a lot of games. Unless this lineup starts figuring it out, you're going to lose a lot of games. Keep in mind, y'all, over the remaining part of the season, the Bulls have the 16th toughest schedule in the league. That's right outside, the top half, right? And so by being forced to play your worst lineup, you could actually be increasing your lottery odds by doing that. And that's something that I know that a lot of Bulls fans, especially with this draft coming up, aren't necessarily going to hate. The Bulls right now have the 8th worst record in the NBA. Right now that they don't have to worry about staying in that top 10 either for them to keep their pick, the Bulls said it with an interesting scenario to add an asset in this draft that can hopefully help things make sense going forward. But that's where this team is yet again, right? And so I say all that to say this. The Chicago Bulls front office may either be the biggest idiots or maybe they're underratedly smart. And by that, I mean that what if by being forced to play your worst lineup, tons of minutes together, you not only increase your lottery chances, let's say the Bulls do end up in that top 4 of the lottery, right? And they are able to draft either Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, a VJ Edgecombe, right, to add to this team. What does that then do for the future? Does that make it more clear? You still got to develop the guy, of course, right? But you're getting one of the best talents in one of the deepest drafts in recent memory. And that's what the underrated, I guess, benefit to say all this is. And I don't trust AK and Eversley enough to say that this was done by intentionally, right? But I guess we'll see. But hey, you know who's going to suffer more than anybody else? Us. Because we're going to be forced to watch a lineup that we know isn't going to work, a lineup that isn't going to be good, but we get to watch the development of Matas. We get to watch Coby White be a more high-usage player. We get to watch Nikola Vucevic, and on today's episode of Dragon Ball Z, does Nikola Vucevic up his trade value or does he make it worse? Tune in today to find out. That's what we get to see for the Chicago Bulls for the remaining part of the season, fellas. And ladies, for that matter. And I will be your therapist here, guiding you through this process. And let's see where we end up at, guys. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.